Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Randy Atwood. I'm with the Tallahassee Democrat, and we have already had our first technical difficulty because William Hatfield, who is our moderator today, his computer fell off of his desk. So he is in the process of coming back. Here he is. And I'm going to put him on the screen now and take myself.
All right. Well, after that last minute bit of drama, welcome to our 2020 primary election virtual candidate forums. We have viewers today on Facebook, YouTube, and Tallahassee.com. If you're on social media, please hit the share button and make sure all your friends have the opportunity to see the discussion today too. My name is William Hatfield. I'm the editor of the Tallahassee Democrat. I'll be today's moderator. I'd like to thank our partners, the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee, and introduce Christine Coble, who will also be asking questions on behalf of the League. Periodically, you'll see both our election websites on the screen, where you can find more information to help you figure out how to vote with confidence. I will point out that this is our first time using this newfangled platform. It does seem to be pretty dang perfect for the coronavirus era, and but nonetheless, please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. We are proud today to be here with candidates for School Board District 4. The incumbent is DeeDee Rasmussen, and her opponent is Alex Stemle. Candidates, you have any questions before things begin? Great.
No questions. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And so here's how things are going to work. We're going to take turns asking questions. We'll switch off which candidate gets to answer first. We're going, I've been known to screw that up. So if I do call on you and you know it's not your turn to go first, feel free to point at the other candidate and I'll make sure that the question goes to them first. But I will be swapping back and forth. We're going to ask each of you to keep your answers to about 2 minutes. I'll keep time and I'll wave at you when your time is up, like this. In the middle, we'll also have a lightning round where we ask you to keep your answers to just a sentence. You can have an and in there, but it's the school board, so we got to keep it not too much of a run-on sentence. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube and you have a question for the candidates, you can go ahead and type them in the comments, and we'll definitely try to get to as many of them as we can. Time is very limited, so you can improve your chance of your question being asked if you keep it brief and polite. Make it a question applicable to both the candidates. So let's jump in and start with the first question. We will start with Ms. Rasmussen. And the first question is, we're going to start with what is on everyone's mind. Should we start school in person on August 19th? And as a school board member, what is your plan for school in the fall?
That would be the question. That's obviously the question of the day that we've been grappling mightily with. I was pleased to see that we convened 20 different focus groups and task forces. And my answer is I'm going to continue as I have consistently to rely on our healthcare community, our local health department, the CDC, and our local health experts. I was on the phone with several of them this morning, and I was encouraged that they seem to be thinking that we may have a vaccine in as early as 6 to 8 months. So we will get through this, but that doesn't help the kids in school that need to be there right now. And of course, it's a difficult task because on the one hand, we normally have a summer slide. I've begun to refer to this as now we're in an avalanche because we lost, the last quarter, the significant pieces of the last quarter of instruction. And now we've had the summer. And, the Pediatric Society has said that children need to get back to school. The business community has pled with us. Parents have said, please, our children need social interaction. They need one-to-one instruction with real engagement. And so if our primary job is education, but it's been eclipsed now by health and safety. Obviously I have a significant concern about protecting our workforce, making sure that our teachers and staff are as protected as possible. We will get through this, but the downside is for kids that are if we don't go back to school, the downside is we've got kids that are in impoverished circumstances, maybe domestic violence, maybe child abuse. We have children that are living in foster homes. We have kids who are extreme extroverts who need social interaction, or we land ourselves in depression. If the economy tanks any further, then we're looking at, hunger and crime. And okay, I'm being cut off. So our plan is to stick with the medical experts, subject to what is allowable by the Department of Education.
All right, thank you. Same question, Mr. Stemle.
Well, currently we have a very fearful community and a very frustrated base of teachers, obviously, and we've heard that here recently. One of the things that I believe is that we're not going to get to a solution that works until we engage the people on the front lines, and that's everything from our bus drivers to our teachers to our assistant principals, our support staff. And when we can engage them, which I don't believe we did a good job of doing, we did create some task forces, and I hear these 20 different focus groups. But at the end of the day, when we engage our frontline users, and when I talk about that, our teachers and our support staff, not only do we get them engaged in the input, but we also get them a little bit more confident about the return to school. They get a little bit more input in the decision making. And so I really would have liked to see a solution that is designed from the bottom, information pushed to the top. We create a framework that we could have given the task force, that they really could have looked at some of the things that our schools are able to do, some of the things that they're not able to do. Our teachers are the ones that are in the classrooms. They're the ones that understand how learning works, how kids move around campuses and within their classrooms. And so if we don't engage them on the front lines, not only are they going to be fearful to return, but I don't believe we're going to get to that solution. So one of the things about this campaign is it really is about connecting the dots at the school level and putting the resources from the board level into those schools. And so I look forward to connecting those dots and making sure that the input, not just from the teachers, but from the parents and from the community is really taken into account when we make our decisions and where we put our resources. If we would have been able to bring the task force X, Y, and Z is what we need for our schools, and maybe engage the people at the bottom that are very outside of the box, creative people. Our teachers come up with solutions out of the box every day, and they're really the ones who are making the difference. We have parents that I've spoken to that have input, and we need to make sure we engage all of them.
Thank you. Sticking with the coronavirus here, do you think teachers can add the policing of masks and social distancing to what they already do? And if not, how is that going to get done? And we're going to stick with you, Mr. Stemle.
Yeah, I think teachers will do whatever you ask them to, and they'll do it to the best of their ability. I do have some concerns about how we are going to educate our kids in a format where we don't see each other's faces. One of the things that's important for educators and parents understand this is that we have to be able to communicate with our kids and build a trust, and they have to have interactions that are really meaningful and engaged learning. And so as we develop our plan, we've got to make sure that, if we're going to go with the policing of the mask, teachers can do it. They will do it. They'll do whatever we ask them to, and usually in the sake of the kids and what they need. But I do have some concerns about coming back to the classroom and trying to police the mask issue.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, same question. Same question.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and for the record, so far we don't disagree. So those are all the things that we've all been talking about. And this mask issue is a difficult one, although I have been encouraged. I'll tell you, as I've been out in the community a little bit more than before, I've been seeing an increasing number of children wearing masks and seemingly doing well. And of course, there's every child is different. Every kid has a different reaction. I personally can't stand masks, but I'm getting better. As I grow more accustomed to it, it's not that big of a deal. But compliance will be an issue, obviously, and I hope, again, turning up the air conditioner for one thing, making it cooler in the classroom, having mask breaks that are socially distanced. Those are all the new elements of this new reality that we're in. And as usual, we're asking the teachers yet again to take the brunt of this responsibility. And that is really an incredible lift for them, in addition to the thousands of other things they have to do. And we're in a tough spot, but I don't disagree with Mr. Stemle. I think our teachers have over and over and over again said, put me in, coach, I'm ready to play. Like, I will figure out how to have a hard corner for security in the event of a live shooter. I will figure out how to get through to my children. But that face-to-face interaction, and I worried initially, especially about little kindergartners showing up and not being able to see their teacher smile at them for reassurance. Those are the reading of the lips, and the body language is one of the most important parts of in-person education. That said, I'm pleased that we have a plan, assuming that the DOE will approve it, that we can offer parents a choice. And if they're not comfortable and they're able to have their child learn virtually, then I'm glad that we at least have those choices that are available based on a family's decision. I see you waving at me.
Thank you. So one last question that I'd ask you to keep your answer to a minute for on this topic. We're staying with you, Ms. Rasmussen. What is your thoughts on the state mandate that brick and mortar schools must be open?
My thoughts, must we open?
The state issued the mandate that says brick and mortar schools must be open in the fall.
Right. So the issue here is if this were any other issue, I might say, let's go to court over home rule. Let's question the commissioner's authority. But in this case, I think we would have a vaccine before we were able to complete that litigation. That would be costly. And I want to remind you and our viewers that, and please don't misunderstand me. Somebody I think did the other day when I said this. We are regulated and directed by the Florida Department of Education, and that's where all of our funding streams come from. So I'm not saying that money is more important than health and safety. I'm saying that if we don't comply with their rules, they will not pay us. So we can't pay teachers. We can't turn the lights on. So as long as I would hope that our citizens would contact the Commissioner of Education and the governor, and if they feel that we need to push it back past what the allowable last date is right now. This has been a moving target, though. I have not lost hope that that they will change. I mean, this thing has been a constant moving target.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stemle. Same question.
Well, we have to come up with a solution that gets our kids back to learning, and regardless of what format that is. And obviously, we're talking about two different formats here. We have the one-to-one issue, which I have some major concerns about 35,000 computers being imaged and ready to go, and even more concerned with our workforce being trained and ready to go in a digital format. We already know that a big portion of our parents are 40% of our parents are looking at the digital academy. And I'm afraid that we even have more than that are waiting to kind of see how things are, and that they're probably looking to retreat back if things don't change. And so we've got to develop that. But we also have to have a place where kids can come that need it. And, and when we talk about the slide of learning in the summer, we definitely have seen a slide in learning in the spring. And so we have to come up with solutions. And I'm hearing from our teachers, and it may look different. The teachers may be at home teaching on the digital, and we may have some sort of hybrid approach, but we've got to get to our solutions.
All right, thank you. We are now going to turn things over to our League of Women Voters partners for a question.
Hello. This question comes from one of our forum partners, NAACP. What would you do to have in place to ensure equality in education for students, especially those who may not have access to today's technology?
My turn?
Ms. Rasmussen.
Is it my turn, I think?
Yeah.
You think it's Thank you. Well, and so I am very pleased that we were able to execute a contract to acquire one-to-one devices. But let me hasten to say that the technology that we're acquiring, COVID was an accelerator for that. It wasn't the reason for it. We've been long planning to try to get to a place where we could have one-to-one technology that the district could support, because we were sort of piecemealing it before. You know, one school had a little bit of this and another school had a little bit of that, and the district can't support all those different platforms. Now, with every child having a Chromebook, which is limited specifically to Leon County Schools content, and it's encrypted and protected, every child will have a device which will be their new textbook set, for example, and their ability to access all the content and to submit their content. And the kids are pretty tech savvy. They'll catch on pretty fast. I do agree that the platform that our instructors are having to learn is a new one to them. It's called Canvas. It's one that FSU uses, but we have a number of partners over at Florida State who've offered to help our teachers get up to speed. It's not really intuitive, but it isn't insurmountable. So I have faith that our teachers will. I do wish we had more time for them. And that's one of the things I've been pushing for, is to give our teachers time to get acclimated to this new way of work. But I do think that going to one, that was one of the criticisms, right? In the last quarter, when we had to just like turn on a dime and go from brick and mortar to virtual, that we went 1,000 different ways, and teachers were, to their credit, they were finding ways to get the job done, but it wasn't the same. So if you had 3 or 4 children at home, you might be having to go to 5 or 6 different, and heaven for, if they had 6 teachers in high school, you might have 6 different platforms and 6 different ways. And maybe you have a family of 5, mom and dad are working from home on the laptops. You've got 1 laptop left for the 3 kids to share. That's a problem. So not only is it equity across the county to make sure that all children have this access, but it's also good instructional intent.
Thank you. Mr. Stemle, same question.
All right, well, Ms. Rasmussen brought it up, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the one-to-one. She did mention we have several schools that have already gone one-to-one, and unfortunately, because we didn't have the leadership at the board, we had a lot of the community PTO programs, people that other schools that had to use some of their funds, schools had to use funds to find ways to go one-to-one. That was a need we've had for years. It's not something that just came up, and I understand and have the utmost great respect for Ms. Rasmussen and appreciate her time on the board, but that decision to not pull the trigger years ago is what's really caused us to have a what the superintendent called a mess on our hands. And so when we talk about equality, I am a virtual school adjunct teacher. I've taught in Canvas, and I've never had a kid or a parent tell me that they weren't able to access the Canvas based on their platform or their computer. And so one of the things that I'm finding out now is that we're using a lot of our computers at the school level. We're pulling them back to the district. We're re-imaging them so that we can get them out to the digital academy kids, because we're afraid that those computers that are on a slow boat from China aren't going to be here. And so I really would have liked to have seen that decision. And if I get a chance to be on the board, I will help the school board see this, that we could have implemented that in a different approach, save some resources, because that's what we're missing right now, are the resources to be able to pull this off and get the kids back to school. And so if we would have done more of a phased implementation, really looked at what our inventory was, I think that we could have found out a solution. And I think we're going to end up at that solution anyways. We're going to end up using some of our technology when we start school here that we already had in our schools, if those Chromebooks aren't here on their way. And just to add to the equity question, one of the main issues that I have and that I hope to bring to District 4 is that we hear a lot about Title I schools, but we all know that we have students that are vulnerable at all schools. And so when we make decisions to feed schools at Title I schools, unfortunately, we're forgetting about a lot of students that are in the District 4 schools. And we have kids out maybe on Highway 12 Road. We have kids out west, out north. Not all the kids that go to District 4 schools have everything that they need. And so when we make some decisions at the school board, we need to make sure that we're not just talking about schools at Title I schools, but we're talking about all kids that may need that extra support.
Thank you. I'm going to let Ms. Rasmussen respond for 30 seconds. Just anytime a candidate kind of, brings up a platform or an issue for another candidate, usually I'll try to give them 30 seconds to respond. Ms. Rasmussen.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Time and time again, every time. In fact, just recently, we voted last budget cycle to put additional money in for kids for field trips, and the emphasis was on Title I. And I said, wait a minute, we have poor children in every single school. So we came up with a formula to distribute that money to make sure sure that children who are on free and reduced lunch in every school have a proportionate share of those funds. For the one-to-one, I would respectfully disagree, and based on all of my conversations with our principals and our technology staff, the technology that we currently have, as you know, a computer in 2 or 3 years is obsolete almost anyway. But those that aren't, we're repurposing them. Our pre-K, we were not able to order Chromebooks for pre-K instruction. A lot of our teachers don't have devices that they can take home. So those computers that are still valid or valuable will be repurposed.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
All right, we're going to stay on the coronavirus topic or come back to it briefly. How do you balance privacy requirements and the safety of kids? So the bottom line is, what should happen if a student is exposed to COVID-19? Let's say they have a sick family member and they need a quarantine for 14 days. Who gets alerted? Should everyone that the child has had classes with be alerted in quarantine? What if the child was on a bus? All of these questions. What's your thoughts on that? And Mr. Stemle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, obviously that's something that we have to solve. And that's one of the questions, the big questions that our community has is will there be notification if their child or a teacher is exposed to this? And so when we talk about putting kids on buses, I have firsthand experience with buses, and I can tell you many of the buses in District 4 are stacked full, 3 deep on each side. And when a bus driver is driving down the road, they're not worried about checking on the mask. And so I am very fearful that we're going to get into a situation where we may call in the health department to come do some tracing and help us. But at the end of the day, we're going to find out that we have a lot of kids that maybe were in situations where they took that mask off and an adult didn't see them. And so when you're talking about putting kids on buses and putting kids in classrooms in large groups, we have to have a plan for that. And when you hear that there's lack of testing here locally and that parents hear that, oh, we're not going to tell you about it. And again, there are some legal issues that we have to work through. That causes concern, and it creates a sense of fear in our community that we need to communicate and do better at making sure that they understand what it's going to look like when we return to school. And we have an honest conversation about how kids move, if they're social distance, if somebody takes off a mask and we walk down the aisle, how are we going to address them eating? How are we going to address mask breaks? How are we going to address playground equipment, cleaning bathrooms in between uses? We have a lot of questions that our community is looking for, and it comes back to the safety of their kids. And so we've got to come up with a plan. It's got to be presented to our community sooner than later so that we can reduce this fear and get our community back at school when they are ready to return.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, same question. Uh-oh, you may be muted. Can you hear me? We can't hear you though. Did you hit mute by chance? Oh, now try.
Now can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
No?
Technical crisis averted.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Yes, another one. The rapid test, well, first of all, the laws and the statutes are pretty clear about the role of the Department of Health. We are educators, we are not health experts. So when it comes to the tracing and the notification of people and all of those things, we have to rely on the Department of Health, which is their area of expertise. The rapid testing that Florida State and the University of Florida are doing right now, they're coming up with new innovative technologies. We are hoping that we will be able to tap into that through TMH. And for our faculty, our staff, because they are the ones who we need to know right away. Do they need a quarantine or can they move on? I've been a little frustrated, honestly, with the inability but we're in uncharted territory. So I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but it is frustrating to me. I keep asking for a decision tree or a module that outlines our protocols, exactly what's going to happen. I think parents want to know if a child in my kid's class is test positive or, recently we made a decision on the athletic teams because there were a number of cases that were positive. So I think they're on top of it, but we're, just tipping our toe in the water compared to having potentially even if half of our kids come back into brick and mortar, that's, half of 34,000 people. That's a lot. And then there are other options that are out there, but they do give me a little bit of concern. There's technology right now, I think, where you can wear a bracelet, and it will tell you've been within 6 feet of all day at school. That's a privacy issue to a degree, but maybe while you're at school, obviously, you know who the population at school is. And if we do have to trace, that's something that we might be able to take advantage of.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Sure. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I keep hearing Ms. Rasmussen talk about hypotheticals and what ifs and hoping that we have a vaccine and hoping that we have rapid testing. And our community's looking for a plan now, and they're looking for something that works for them now. And so, I hope that we can get there sooner than later. But again, I'm going to go back to the very beginning. If we don't engage the people in the front line, those parents and those teachers, we're not going to come up with a solution that works.
Ms. Rasmussen, you have a response to that? Ms. Rasmussen, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Yes. I probably get 1,000 ideas a day. And I appreciate the fact that some people may be frustrated with our inability to give specifics. But I would just, with all due respect, remind everybody that, we are in an unprecedented time in a crisis, and we are all across the country, every school district in this country, every state, trying to figure it out and trying to do the best we can, given the legal and moral obligations that we have. And we have a lot of very concrete ideas, but at the moment, they are not either affordable or by the Department of Education.
Thank you. We have a question that has come in from the audience on Facebook, and it is, what is your position on the importance of arts education, and how do you preserve things like band and the arts in the coronavirus era? Mr. Stemle.
Yeah, I 100% support the band, arts, and all of the extracurricular activities that students need to engage them in the learning that we do. One of the things that frustrates me at the school level is we talk about the $1 million that was passed out across the district for the arts and science, the arts and performing arts. Unfortunately, that wasn't divided up on a per pupil basis. It was divided up per school. And so schools that might have had 1,000 participants had the same share of dollars in District 4 that a school maybe in another district had a lot less participation in their school. And so the resource share there was not equitable for our kids. And so as we go forward at the board, I look forward to being a part of that decision to where that money's for those arts and performing arts programs can be distributed in a more equitable manner to the, based on a per pupil, just like we do a lot of the other funding and things that Ms. Rasmussen has even touched on before. So in terms of arts and funding, I'm looking for more money to come in there, and I'm looking for ways to create partnerships and create, things here in the community that will really support those programs. And I just feel that we got to do better.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, same question.
Thank you. I am probably the biggest proponent of the arts you will find. I was a chorus kid myself. My 3 children were all involved in the arts. My twins in particular at Leon High School, which has a very robust performing arts program. And but I will tell you what Mr. Stemle just said. I am not going to give less money to a school that doesn't yet have a robust arts program, but needs the money to help develop a robust arts program. So I would not be in favor of divvying out arts money based on current participation, because my hope would be that we would grow participation in the arts. There is ample evidence to show that art instruction, music, band, performing builds confidence. It helps with math skills. It's attorneys, sports broadcasters, all of those people that have well-paying jobs need those skills that can be developed through the arts. So I would hope if the argument that he's raising is that we should give, you know, we should distribute the money based on participation. I would not particularly agree, because I think in some of our schools, like look at the arts, you should see the arts in some of our Title I schools, where our partnership with the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra, or our partnership with the Shakespeare Foundation, where Shakespeare, I don't know if any of you saw the play that they did, A Town Divided. What an incredible gift to our community during this intense racial divide, where they took the traditional Shakespeare play of Romeo and Juliet and turned it into a kid from the South Side and a kid from the North Side, and use the arts to bring in a great conversation and robust bridge building.
Thank you. Mr. Stemle, did you want to respond to that for 30 seconds?
Yeah, I just, from what I'm hearing from Ms. Rasmussen, then, so, you know, most of the District 4 schools are significantly bigger than some of the schools in other parts of this district. And so what I'm hearing is that if we have a school of 1,000, which may have 300 people participating in the performing arts, that she's okay giving them the same amount of money as a school that maybe has 300 that has 70 people participating in the arts. And I just want her to clarify that if she would like.
Okay, Ms. Rasmussen?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I didn't mean to that degree. What I was saying is that this was additional funding for the arts to either build new art programs or to help support. Like if you've got a big marching band, you might need to buy more instruments. I know at Leon High School, there is a Leon Foundation for the Performing Arts. You know, the art programs at Lincoln and Childs and Leon are incredible. The first time I saw Les Mis twice on Broadway and once in the Leon High School auditorium, and there was not a lot of difference. I mean, I'm not saying we're New York, but they were incredibly.
Thank you. All right, we're going to keep things moving here because we have a lot of topics to cover. We're going back to our League of Women Voters partners. Christine?
Yes, this is a two-part question, and if you'd keep to 1 minute for each part. What is your position on charter schools? Mr. Stemle?
Okay, you want me to go ahead and just answer that first? Well, I will tell you, one of the things about charter schools is obviously we have parents in our system who were looking for an educational opportunity that fit better than what we offer. And so one of my position with charter schools is we've got to do better. We've got to find what it is that we could not provide those parents. And we need to make sure that we have those innovations and those resources and that flexibility at the schools to be able to offer our communities what they are. Here in District 4, we've got hundreds of parents here in District 4 that do not send their kids to our schools, that go to a very high-performing, very high-quality charter school that I can support, but we're losing dollars that we should be able to reinvest back into our schools. And if we are able to have some innovation, some flexibilities within our system for our schools to really understand what it is that those kids left our school, public school funding source, and to go to somebody else, it would probably help us as a system get across get kids back into our schools.
Thank you.
Ms. Rasmussen?
Thank you for the question. It's interesting. I worked in the legislature when charter schools were first envisioned, and at the time they were supposed to fill a gap or fulfill a particular need that we couldn't fulfill. It's evolved, and I'm not afraid of competition. We can compete, but what makes it difficult and frustrating is that the way that the competition field isn't level. The way that the rules of the game have evolved. For example, PICO, public education outlay, is the funds to build schools. The amount of money that the state appropriated for charter schools was equal to the amount that the state appropriated for traditional public schools statewide. So, and yet our facilities are supposed to be created to withstand a hurricane and provide a shelter. So it's just that the playing field isn't level. I think that the School for Arts and Sciences is an excellent school. They provide kind of a unique niche. We've done a good job with unique too. We've got SAIL and I'm being cut off, so I could go on.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to get to the second part of the question, which is staying with it. Christine, would you like to, I believe this will stick with Ms. Rasmussen. And Christine, would you like to offer that next question?
Yes. Do you believe that public money should be spent on private and religious schools, and why? Ms. Rasmussen.
If the legislature wanted to appropriate it from a different pot of money for, I guess the answer is no. But I understand parents who have a need to have choice and they want to send their child somewhere else. So should they maybe get a tax credit if they're in a failing school? I get that. But at the same time, though, a free and equal all access public education system, if we were fully funded, adequately funded, and we had plenty of money to help every child have a unique experience that was different, that may be one thing. But the way we are funded right now, it's difficult for us to look at. I think we're going to be looking at very, very significant budget cuts in the coming year because of the downturn in the economy, and probably a special session after November. And so, especially in this particular time, I think it's difficult to rationalize that approach.
Thank you. Mr. Stemle, same question.
No, my answer is no. I hear DeeDee that, we're going to definitely have some resource allocation issues as we go forward, but that's why it's important that we don't have a career staffer and we have a career educator up on the board, and that we have somebody that has a voice that really understands where our resources are going and where they really impact learning. And so to answer your question, the answer is no. But, I look forward to being that new voice on the board that will be able to kind of direct them to where is it that we can find the waste within our system? Where is it that we can find ways to be more efficient? And where is it that we really impact learning and in the classroom? And so I look forward to that. I hope that our budget cuts aren't as bad, but I do think that there's ways that we can be innovative within the system and get our community the best possible education, for their students and their kids.
Thank you. Let's stay with this idea of budget cuts really quickly. I mean, there has been a lot of rumblings about giant budget cuts for next year. I think the school district itself is kind of going through an exercise looking at, a range of pretty serious cuts. If that happens, what do you cut, Mr. Stemle?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that you're absolutely right. But at the same time that we're talking about having budget cuts, we pass out $400,000 to the people that are making the most in our system. We tried a failed bus implementation where we know that there were some major inefficiencies with our school district. And again, it was a failed implementation because we didn't get the voice and the input from the people at the bottom. And we're going to continue to make mistakes here, and we're going to continue to not come up with solutions that work if we continue to fail to listen to the people at the bottom and get information up to the top, so that the people making the decisions at the district and at the school board level can make the best decisions that they can. And so, I think we've wasted some resources in some of our one-to-one. While I do support it, we passed out $400,000. And so I hear that we're going to have budget cuts down the road, but it sure doesn't look like that in terms of some of the decision making that we've made. And yeah, we couldn't have predicted the coronavirus, happening here, but we should have been ready for something, that we could be unexpected. And we did have some reserves in place, and hopefully we'll be able to use those to get us across, this tumultuous time. But I think we got to really look at the way we spend our money, and I think we've been irresponsible in that here lately.
Thank you, Ms. Rasmussen.
I don't know that I heard the question.
Oh, sure. I can tell you. There's been a lot of rumblings. There's been a lot of what? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. There's been a lot of rumblings about giant
budget cuts
next year due to coronavirus. If that happens, what do you cut?
Well, I think it depends on the amount of cuts and whether it's mid-year cuts or it's looking forward. I think we don't know yet what if we have an economic recovery for June. The legislature continues to insist that we have ample reserves and we won't have mid-year cuts. And so, but in my experience, having worked in that process, I remember back in the recession of the 90s, we had 21 special sessions to cut the budget. But I want to address what Mr. Stemle keeps raising, which is, this is why we need another educator on the board. Everyone who works in the district is a former educator. Every assistant superintendent, the current superintendent. We have the fortune of having Roseanne Wood on the board, who is a seasoned, lifelong principal of a school. We have Ms. Striplin, who is an educator from Deer Lake, where Mr. Stemle works. And so I think the purpose of having a community board is to have a different voice, a different perspective. Because as I said, every recommendation that comes from the superintendent and his staff, and I appreciate and applaud their expertise, but frankly, I am one of the voices that is the different voice. I think it didn't take me very long to figure out that it was, when you're governing and you're trying to be a part of a collegial body and you're a leader and you have to look at the big picture. We have plenty of people who understand what's happening on the ground. I will concede that I am frustrated that we, in this pandemic, that we did not do a better job of hearing the voices of our teachers. That has been very clear, especially lately. And I was talking to teachers that I knew, but I was very disappointed to learn that the district staff had not done a better job in that area. What
can I respond to that, William?
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
yes, you
Yeah,
can.
so Ms. Rasmussen respectfully, continues to talk about how the superintendent and district administrators and people out there are involved or have been in schools. And my thing, we may have just a different style of leadership, but I believe that there is a responsibility from the school board that represents District 4, that member, to be involved and engaged and active and visible on our campuses and interacting with our principals. I speak to our principals in District 4 every week, quite a few of them, and I still am, teachers, parents. And so it's great that other people have this insight, but the one making the decision that's sitting on the board needs to make sure that they're involved and they're active so that they understand what really is going on in the schools. And, we may just have a different, we may just disagree about the way that governing works, but I would think I'm going to hopefully, that the community here will be able to choose between a career educator or a career lobbyist. That's what it comes down to.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, you can also respond. Would you like to respond, Ms. Rasmussen?
I had a hard time hearing what he said, so we can move on. I think was it part of?
Okay.
Or can you tell me briefly?
All right, we're going to change things up a little bit. We're going to move on to our lightning round. The way the lightning round works is it's a pretty simple question, oftentimes yes or no. We want to keep it to one sentence. You can throw an and in there and a because, but please keep it to one sentence. We will start with you, Ms. Rasmussen. Appointed or elected superintendent?
Well, my job might be easier if they were appointed, but this community has 3 or 4 times now voted to.
Uh-oh.
That answer it while we wait.
That is not a good thing. Ms. Rasmussen was on her phone because she was having a computer surge issue. So I wonder if her phone just dropped out.
William, do you want me to answer it in case she pops up?
Sure. Appointed or elected superintendent?
Well, that's something that our community is going to have to decide. I will say some of the concerns that have been brought up by Ms. Rasmussen directly having to do with the inability to get things done definitely speaks to some advantages that we would have if we had an appointed superintendent. But I think right now, that's not something that's on the table. And so we have to figure out how, as a school board, we can either develop positions underneath us, and maybe it's an inspector general and a staffer, so that we can actually get into these schools and get some decision making, input from them at the bottom, so that we can then make some decisions. And so right now, that's not on the table.
So we're going to stick this to the lightning round. So we're going to keep it to one sentence. And what we'll do is we'll run through your version of the lightning round, and then we'll come back to Ms. Rasmussen because it looks like she may be trying to get back in. And so the next lightning round question, if you had to depend on one source for coronavirus guidance, who or what would it be? One sentence. Mr. Stemle.
Well, I think you got to start with the CDC and the science. But at the end of the day, you got to go to the parents and you got to go to your voters and you got to figure out the temperature of the community and really understand what it is that where they are. And one of the good things is I think that we're going to go.
All right, let's keep going. Should students be allowed to wear Black Lives Matter apparel on campus?
That's already been decided by the Supreme Court. They have freedom of speech on campus, and if that's something that they feel that they want to share, that's fine.
If in the coming year some elective classes have to be eliminated, what are one or two you would be willing to cut, and what are one or two that you think are vital to offer? And this can be two sentences since it's.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that, William, because, as you know, just like essential workers and non-essential workers, there's not one person in this district that thinks their program's not important. And so that wouldn't be responsible for me to answer on that one.
Okay. If the current start date for Leon County Schools is August 19th, I've heard a couple times it said, like, gosh, if we had more time. It does look like Commissioner Corcoran is allowing up to August 30th. Is August 19th the right start date, or should it be pushed back even further?
Well, I don't have all the information. I don't know if the computers on a slow boat from China are even going to be here. So I would need a little bit more information to answer that. But I will tell you, back to what I was saying before, it doesn't matter if the start date's August 19th, August 30th, or in the middle of next month or the following month. We're going to continue to have problems if we don't engage the people at the school in the decision making.
So I don't think this has been decided yet, and I'm a little bit biased on this question because my daughter is a band student. But what happens with band this year? Should the band play on, or does it get shelved till spring semester?
Well, I think that we have very creative people at the school, and I think that there are ways that we can introduce band and music education to our kids in a safe manner. And so again, I'm going to get back to we have to engage those band directors and those band teachers to make sure that we do it. Should
students be marked as absent and unexcused for participating in protests?
I mean, that's, they need to get their work done. If that's something that they feel that is important in their life, obviously, and their parents feel it's important for their life, that's fine. But at the end of the day, they got to make sure they get the work done.
All right. What's one book every student should read?
I mean, one book every student should read. There's a Book of Fish series out there that talks about being happy and making sure that you see what's really important in life. And I would like to see all the kids read that quick little fish book series. All
right. Hey, Ms. Rasmussen. So we were creative. We were creative in your absence. And what we did is went through the lightning round and we kept it with Mr. Stemle. So now we're going to do the same with you. Can you hear us? And can you speak?
Yes, I can.
Another technical difficulties overcome so smoothly in the coronavirus era. All right, here we go. So there again, the lightning round works. You got one sentence to respond. The first question is, if you had to depend on one source for coronavirus guidance, who or what would it be?
The local Department of Health and our local health officials, given that they're also in line to receive the best information from sources above them.
Thank you. I think that was one sentence. Well done. Should students be allowed to wear Black Lives Matter apparel on campus?
The courts have already spoken to that. As long as their apparel is not disruptive of the school day, and that's where principals have discretion to step in.
Okay, and you got two sentences on this one. If in the coming year some elective classes have to be eliminated, what are one or two you would be willing to cut, and what are one or two that you think are vital to offer?
given our ability to access so much content online with, I think that it's a tough one to answer. So for example, I have a friend who he could not understand his chemistry professor. And so he went to online to MIT to get, content. So maybe it's based on student demand and,
Okay.
and then the state law.
All right. So the current school start date is August 19th. I believe the education commissioner gave schools the latitude to push things all the way up to August 30th. I've heard you say that, if we had more time, is August 19th the right date, or are you in favor of a later school start date?
I wish we could go to Labor Day. I think that would give everybody a little bit more time to get acclimated to the new.
Let's see. A lot of talk. I'm a little bit biased on this question in that my daughter is a band kid, but I don't think it's been decided yet. With the coronavirus concerns, should band go on or should it get shelved till next semester?
I do not think it should get shelved. It may have to be modified, but there
are. Should students be marked as absent and unexcused for participating in protests?
That may also be one for the courts to decide. I certainly support their First Amendment right to.
Okay. What is one book every student should read?
I can't limit it to one. My top
All right.
Sorry. I heard the buzzer on that game show.
All right. Well, you've both made it through the lightning round, and we were able to creatively work things that we're keeping things going. We're coming to the final stretch here. We're going to go back to the League of Women Voters for a question. Christine?
This question is coming again from one of our forum partners, the Urban League. It is, what is your position on vocational training / education in high school? Mr. Stemle.
Yeah, I think it's very important that we have resources for our vocational programs. One of the things that we do know is that college is not for all of our students, and we need to make sure that we provide the resources and the flexibility for our schools to be able to provide our students with skills as they leave our care. And so we need to make sure that we have programs such as shop and graphic arts, which I had at Raw Middle School. It's one of the few schools that still has it. We need to make sure that we have that, and we need to make sure that society understands that not everybody is going to go to college, and not everybody has to, that you can make a very productive living and be a very productive part of society and a taxpayer citizen, even if you don't go to college. And so I think we have a responsibility in the messaging, and we have a responsibility in the infrastructure and the skills that we provide.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen?
Well, I would have to agree with everything you just said because I've said it all myself. Also, I would add to that the college debt. When our students could come out of a apprenticeship track, making really solid money, and then even if they chose, for example, let's say they were in one of the subcontractor fields, and then they decided to go to finish getting their bachelor's degree to become a general contractor or project manager. Those are very lucrative and important jobs. So, and I think the apprenticeship programs are something that we need to expand. And I definitely think, I know my son and his buddies love to shop at Raw, and they are really productive now in many ways because of it. And so I think we need to get back to the basics in some ways. But I also appreciate all of the advanced placement and IB, and we have to have different tracks and different paths to graduation.
Thank you. All right, we got one more question here, and then I'm going to turn it over to y'all for kind of closing arguments on basically, to make the case directly to voters on why they should vote for you. But before we get to that place, one last question, and that question is, while our kids have been away from school these last 5 months, the world has changed. How much it has changed. Separate from academics, how should the school help them readjust socially and emotionally as they transition from isolation to being back with people and behavioral expectations? Ms. Rasmussen, we're going to start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've talked a lot about that too, and I'm concerned, especially with the racial unrest in our community, and if there continues to be an economic downturn that lends itself to increased crime, and children have seen this happen in their not only on the news but in neighborhoods around here, not so much in District 4, but our local community. The headlines, look at the headlines. And so I think we have a job to do. We have to find a way to meet our kids where they are. And our kids, they are not the same kids that left us at spring break. They have been through a lot of issues. And I know, again, I think I mentioned, for kids who are extroverts and they are maybe suffering now from depression and uncertainty, and they're, worried about who knows what has happened in their families or in their parents' socioeconomic situation with so many furloughs and layoffs and uncertainty. And we have to meet them where they are. And we talked actually at the very last school board meeting the other night about the need for a different kind of task force, and may not be a task force, but find ways to meet our kids where they are. And one of the things I'm very proud of in my tenure is what we've been able to do with additional mental health counseling and services for kids, because not only is that a part, obviously, of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, but it's just a part of watching our teenagers struggle with the kind of pressure they're under these days. And I watched that with my 3 teenagers, it's something it's a huge part of what we have to do. And that gets back to my point, and I don't think Mr. Stemle would disagree. We put so much on our teachers. Now they're supposed to be, protecting the mental health and protecting the physical health and protecting kids from, okay, I'm being cut off. I see you now. So I'll stop.
Thank you. Mr. Stemle, same question.
Yeah, well, Ms. Rasmussen mentions New Horizons, and that's a program we have in our schools that we utilize. And unfortunately, I don't think a student right out of college that just finished up their internship is going to be enough for our students when we get back. We have to make sure that our teachers have the professional development. We need to make sure that our schools have the resources and the flexibility to get to our students, whatever it is that they may need. My concern is our teachers are going to be asked a lot when we go back. And between the new one-to-one that they're going to have to use, the new learning management system Canvas, the new form of delivery, and then we're talking about the issues that you raised with students coming back with some things that maybe they didn't have when they left us. But I'll tell you, I think our teachers are some of the best in the state and the best in the country. And I think that if you gave them the skills and you give them the professional development and the time to actually get that professional development done and really get in there and get their feedback, I think that you'll find that we got some of the people we have in our system are the right people. We also need to make sure that we have a very diverse staffing at our schools. We need to make sure that we get kids, staff and adults that are from different backgrounds and different experiences to interact and to build relationships with our kids, because I think it's important that they understand that not everybody is exactly like them, and that there are other perspectives and there are other ideas, and it's okay that we don't agree on everything. And I think that's where we as a system have a responsibility that we need to really address when we get back. And I'll actually say we need to address it now. We're getting behind the ball here. We've got a lot to do in a very short amount of time, and I hadn't seen much movement since we got out of school.
Thank you. All right, it is closing time, and we are going to make it by just going over time, I think, a couple minutes. Mr. Stemle, we're going to start with you. Talking directly to voters, why should voters vote for you?
Yeah, well, one of the things that made this campaign kind of happen was we realized that there was not a voice here in this district, and so I hope to bring a voice back to the district here for the parents, the teachers, all the support staff, and the administrators. But one of the things that we didn't mention on is that Ms. Rasmussen has accepted a job with a lobbying firm that prevents her from voting on the school board issues that have to do with construction-related issues. She's abstained from dozens of dozens of votes here in the recent months. And unfortunately, I am a candidate, and I give I put it out there so the community could have another option here in August 18th. But my candidacy will be able to vote on all issues. I'll be active. I'll be involved. I'll be in your schools weekly. I'll be working with your principals. And I hope that people will go do their homework. The primary education, the primary votes here are going to be cast here shortly, and we know that primary voters they're going to go out and do their homework. And so we hope that when they do that, they can look to our candidacy and they see two very different candidates with two very different backgrounds, with two very different ideas and about the way that the school should go, and two very different leadership styles. And that's okay. But we hope that as people do their research, they'll be able to look and see that this is some campaign that they can support, and that they're looking for some fresh ideas and a new perspective.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, you got 2 minutes to close, and you can also respond to Mr. Stemle.
Thank you. I'll briefly respond to the construction issue. I am the CEO of Associated Builders and Contractors of North Florida, which spans from Lake City to Pensacola. I'm responsible for their professional development, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with school construction or contracts. But in the abundance of caution, I went to the Florida Ethics Commission to get an opinion. They recommended that I abstain just to avoid the appearance of any kind of conflict. Moreover, because of the way schools are funded and the Department of Education regulates school construction, there will be no major construction in the foreseeable future. The next big project down the line we have is a new roof at WT Moore and some sprinklers and other things while we're at it in the gym at Leon. We are not allowed right now, based on student stations and the way the department works, to build new schools on the north side of the town or anywhere. That's why we renovated Rickards with demolition and not with new construction. So I have revisited, I was abstaining in the abundance of caution. And since the issue has come up, I don't legally have to abstain. And so I'm looking more closely at every single individual item. But I will tell you that is such a minor, not that it's not important, it is critically important. And it was way more important 4 years ago. But right now, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a crisis, I would respectfully suggest that perhaps now is not the time for a learning curve. It's when I was first on the board, every board member will tell you, it is a substantial learning curve. It is a very different thing to govern and understand the laws and the things that regulate our ability to function through myriad issues. And so while I appreciate the opportunity to debate, and it seems like we agreed more today than we have in other separate forums, I think that now is not the time to try to.
Thank you.
Mr. Hatfield, can I respond real quick?
We are going to wrap things up, but what you can do is, if you have a website or a place where people can get more information, shout that out, Mr. Stemle, and same thing for Ms. Rasmussen, and voters can reach you that way.
You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on www.alexstemle.com. I hope that since we do have a website, that Ms. Rasmussen will post that written ethics opinion and give full transparency to the voters so they can see it.
All right, Ms. Rasmussen, what's your contact?
I'd be very happy to do that. It's www.deedee.org. And I look at this as a job interview. I'm interviewing.
Thank you.
Continue my.
All right. This has been a great discussion. Thank you both so much for kicking off our forums in a good and lively discussion. I want to thank, of course, the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee and the candidates for joining us. Our next forum will be at 1 p.m. Tuesday, July 21st, and it will be with the 3 candidates for Tallahassee Commission Seat 1. FYI, you'll be able to find a replay of this and all our interviews on tallahassee.com/elections. And you can look for our special elections section, which will have, interviews with each candidate on issues, which will be printed on Sunday, August 2nd. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, DeeDee.